Today's show brought to you in part by our friends at Naira. Want to let folks know about the Belmont Stakes Betting Challenge. It's coming up real fast, folks. $10,000 two-day contest June 4th and June 5th. $7,500 acts as a live bankroll, $2,500 to the prize pool that gets paid out at 100%. Cash payouts through fourth place. We've got 4 NHC seats for 2022, 2 BCBC seats, and 1 2022 Belmont Stakes Challenge seat as well. You can register today at naira.com/contests. Hello and welcome to the In the Money Players podcast. This is our show for Friday, May 28th. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatow, back with you in the Brooklyn bunker. Once again, we've got a loaded show. We're going to be going in all kinds of different directions. You probably already read all about it in the description, so I won't go through it all here. But I will introduce our first guest, the usual co-host of this program and the star of these airwaves. You know him from such things as being the 2015 NHC Tour champion and being on the Fox broadcast of racing across the country. I'm talking about the man who hails from the planet Texas. He's the people's champion, Jonathan Kitchen. What's up, JK?
PTF, I need to do some dishes. I'm drinking coffee out of like a cocktail tumbler. So.
That's a sure sign that the dishes are piling up in the sink there, JK. We gotta get you working. And true to form, that does not look like what I would call coffee. That looks like one of those milkshake things that you call coffee.
I'm getting much better. This is just like an espresso with like a splash. I know it looks like more than a splash, but
it doesn't look like a splash. I'm not gonna lie. That looks like you put a little coffee in your milk.
Well, there's a chance that that's possibly true, but yeah, looking forward to talking about this Belmont pick six and talking about the pick six in New York moving forward for the rest of the year, and that kind of piggybacks or dovetails. I don't know which one I'm supposed to say, which animal reference I'm supposed to make there, but gets me excited about Saratoga. And I've heard Andy Sterling say it well. Like, let's enjoy Belmont as well, and I will enjoy Belmont. But darn it, I'm excited about Saratoga.
Oh, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. We got the news handed down that there's going to be a lot of areas where if you're double vaccinated, it is business as usual. I was thrilled to hear it. 16 people have asked me, and I don't know what's going on with the paddock bar. That area was not mentioned. You would think as a business, the way they're going to turn over the most money is to make it double vaccinated only, though. And the other cool thing I read deeper in the Mike McAdam article, at first I was a little scared, JK, when it was double vaccinated. I just read that, and I was like, kids? Because, I expect to be spending plenty of time at that track with Austin and Perrin this year. But kids are okay in the double vaccination area if accompanied by a vaccinated adult like this guy right here. So we should be A-okay. I'm just hoping it's the paddock bar. Can you imagine if I'm exiled to another spot? That wouldn't be fun.
The other day, Austin said to me, we were trying to think what we were going to eat for dinner one night here in Austin, and we pretty much go to the same places. And I said, let's go somewhere we haven't been in a while, bud. And he goes, Dad, how about Shake Shack? And I said, Austin, coming up in about a month, you're going to eat Shake Shack every day. I don't think we should waste a meal on Shake Shack here, and it won't even be as delicious. You know what I'm saying? If you don't have some degenerate screaming about getting snapped in the 7th while you're having your Shake Shack, is it really having Shake Shack?
Doesn't taste as good. Doesn't taste anywhere near as good without the bad beat stories ringing in the background. And very good usage of waste a meal too, JK. I can assure you we will not be wasting any meals when you get here to New York next week. The lineup is looking stellar. And because you will be on our airwaves next week, you're going to be part of the tailor-made show that we're doing, just like we did for Derby and Preakness. We're going to do an online version. It's going to live stream Wednesday at noon. So set your calendars, folks. We'll have a way, I think, that you can sign up for a notification via our YouTube channel or something like that. Anyway, we got to figure out all the finer points here. But we want folks to join us live. It'll, of course, be archived as well. But so we're going to get your, that'll be your official opinion. But one thing I didn't get to the last show, because we went on so long talking about God knows whatever we were chatting about. We went pretty far afield there too. I wanted to get your thought on the early prices for the Belmont Stakes. we did through the In the Money Media Twitter a little poll earlier in the week. I was a little bit, I don't want to say, yeah, I was a little surprised by how strong the essential quality support was over Rombauer. I also found it notable how many people were still on the Rock Your World train. I'll just run you through a few prices here, and you can give me your thoughts on whichever you want. In bookmakers that are actually taking wagers, essential quality 3-1, Rombauer 100-30, Hot Rod Charlie 6-1, Known Agenda and Rock Your World 8-1. Keep Me in Mind 13, Rebels Romance 14, Bigger the rest. What, if anything, stands out to you in those prices?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take 3-1 on essential quality yesterday. I think he'll be shorter than that. And, you know, my strongest opinion is that I was against Rock Your World in the Derby, and I'm against him more than the Belmont. I like the idea how he'll be ridden, forward and aggressive, but I was questioning how good he actually was in the beginning, and then I think people are going to get a little bit too excited about him off of that start in the Derby and thinking that he's going to wire this field. I see essential quality running him down late. I see Rombauer running him down late. I see Known Agenda running him down late. But it's a top of the market race for me. I'm not going to get too creative in here. I think that essential quality is the most likely winner. I think Rombauer is the second most likely winner, and I think Known Agenda is the third most likely winner. And basically every ticket I make, not to give it away, we'll talk about more, but it's going to all be built around those three horses in that order.
All right. I'm holding out. Now, I get what you're saying about Rock Your World. If you didn't like him in the Derby, you probably shouldn't be liking him now. But I want to see the pace map. I want to really get down with a set of PPs and a couple of different pace projectors that I use.
He's going to be loose. I can tell you what it's going to look like right now on Timeform US. He's going to be, whatever number he is going to be about 4 chiclets in front. And it's gonna be normal. It's not going to be red. It's not going to be blue. And he's just going to, whatever. And
I'll have to use him as a backup at least if that's the case.
Yeah, and Hot Rod Charlie's a little bit interesting too. I think that's probably one that I maybe have forgot about. I tell you what, there's a lot of Belmonts. Unfortunately, there aren't Triple Crown Belmonts that can kind of be the race itself. Obviously, does what it does to us because we love the race, but it can sometimes be a little bit kind of the third best of the three races.
Also rans, yeah,
but it's not this year. It really feels like there's still a lot to learn, and a lot of times it's not like that. And so I'm looking forward to that. And then just a quick thing, just when I'm thinking about Belmont before I get it off my mind, and we're going to try to do a good job this week of reminding people on the Fox broadcast this week and next week. But the Belmont contest is Friday and Saturday of next week. $10,000 buy-in. I was actually talking like in an email, thinking about the major contests we have in this sport: the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge, the NHC, the Grade 1 Gamble, the contest at Del Mar, Pick Your Prize, Belmont. Like it should be an absolute major. Like it's without a doubt some of the best racing we have all year long. The pools can handle that big money. It's 2 days. So I just want to remind people about that contest next week.
I actually am going to be putting in a shout out in post-production before folks even see this. So we'll have reminded them twice, which is a good thing because I agree with you. I agree with it. I agree with everything you're saying about that. Well, back to your point about the overall strength of the Belmont field. I mean, doesn't it feel overwhelmingly likely that the 3-year-old champion is running in this race? We just don't know who he is yet.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, for sure, right? Because I don't, I think we're just being honest. I don't care what happens with the news moving forward from Medina Spirit, but I would have a hard time seeing him, no matter what he does the rest of the year, being crowned champion. Just with the cloud that's surrounding him, it's unfortunate or fortunate, however you want to look at it. I just don't think he's gonna win.
And Mandaloon, I mean,
he's not going to really get credit for it like he should, though.
Mm-hmm.
If he does get elevated to first, he's not going to get. He's going to need to win the Haskell, and then probably something else.
Yeah.
But I think that a horse like Essential Quality winning this race and then going on to win the Travers. I think that's a tie it up with a bow situation. And then Pete, if you didn't know this, because I actually found out just talking with Lafitte, is that they moved the Haskell.
When is it?
It's opening weekend at Saratoga.
Oh, okay. So they moved it forward.
Yeah, so I will be right that eventually a horse will win the Haskell and the Travers, and it still counts.
That's right. We didn't. That was our bet from many years ago. I was looking good for a while when we had a couple of real shorties turned over trying to complete that double. I think it was after Faro. I said, if this horse didn't do it, nobody's going to do it.
Yeah. So it's
now moved twice. This will be the second move. So it's getting a lot more feasible.
And it's going to be an interesting race, right? Because, there's the thing that's going on there it with the riders and the new rules. I would think some trainers probably won't want to ship their horses there. I mean, you don't want to ship your horse for $1 million race and then do something they've never done before, and then you're going to probably have to part from your regular rider. There's a lot of weird,
moving parts. Yeah, we're going to talk about it all later with Brian Skirka of Monmouth about that whip rule and the controversy surrounding it. Speaking of Tempest in a Teapot, ridiculous controversies. What was with so many people being like super bummed about Mandaloon running in the Pegasus prep race? I think Nick Tamaro made a joke calling it the Pegasus Dixie Cup as opposed to the World Cup. That made me laugh. It seemed like there were some people who were super bummed about him doing that instead of, I guess, the Matt Win. For me, if you want to run in the Haskell, getting that race over the track and with a local rider and with the whip rules just made all the sense in the world. I mean, I guess I get people who might want to have seen the Derby winner, presumptive Derby winner, come back and run in the Belmont, but I also had a lot of sympathy for Brad Cox's point of view when he's got the horse that he believes is going to be, who's better anyway, it seems like in the barn's mind, and certainly better at 1.5 miles, and you have this other goal for your horse you think is better at 1.8 miles. Anyway, I thought it made complete sense and did not understand really at all any of the consternation about it.
Well, I love Nick, obviously, and I think that if I'm being honest, I would tell him this as well. I think Nick loves the Belmont. He loves the Belmont, personally loves it, loves the weekend. It's one of the trips that he always makes. He's bringing his father this year. We have the Peter Luger thing on Friday. He just loves the Belmont. And so I think that in his mind, the idea that you have a horse that would be single digit odds that could run in the Belmont and you don't want to run there because you're going to skip that for the Pegasus rings to him as ridiculous.
Right. To be fair, he made that joke, but I don't even think he was necessarily questioned. I don't even remember which line of the debate he came down on. He was not one of the folks I was thinking of, but that line of thinking, whether it's by him or others, I do have some sympathy for that point of view. That's where having the stablemate who you think your best case is running for second, and I mean, to me it really speaks that they feel like the horse has distance limitations, something Matt Bernier has been saying since January. And
if Nick was a trainer, he would be a run every 3 weeks guy, not a 7-8 weeks point for a race guy. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing, like for him too, is like he's if they're good, run.
Yeah.
Why skip? Run. And
there's a logic to it.
Yeah. Makes sense. I mean,
different programs, I'm building in an understanding of, the MO of the barn into everything I'm saying. And therefore thinking that, the Belmont, it's just, it's the modern game, man. It's not, it ain't like it used to be. And, I just feel like if you're paying attention, you're not surprised by this. But anyway, that's my 2 cents. And again, not specifically meant for Nick. I don't even recall him being on the other side of the debate. I just love that joke about the Pegasus Dixie Cup.
He's a clever one, that Nick.
That's the only reason I brought it up. Okay, you're here to talk about this $1 pick six at Belmont. And if you've missed coverage of the Naira, we used to do it as the pick five. We're pivoting now. Naira are back. They're sponsors, as you know, from having heard me read the ad earlier. We're thrilled to have them back in the mix. And we're thrilled to be able to cover what you and I refer to, JK, as a real pick six. And we're going to be doing it throughout the summer and even the fall. And we're really, really happy about that. the first one, we've got a little bit of a wrench in the works, a fly in the ointment, in that we're looking at a sequence that's got plenty of turf. And I think it's pretty likely that the races that aren't the turf stake might be coming off. I did not do the 100% job for these races off the turf. We will do the best that we can to give you any ideas and inclinations. Of course, if you want to hear real-time info from JK and the rest of the Fox team, you can watch the broadcast tomorrow.
Yeah, and one thing too is I don't, just typically in my real life, I don't prepare for off the turf because you don't know who's going to be in. So it's like you can do all that work, but you still don't know who's scratching, who's running. You don't know the pace scenario. Even if there's 3 MTOs in, it's not crazy that one of them still scratches, and it just, so I always pretend it's turf until it's not.
Let's start off with race number 5. We've got fillies and mares in the allowance ranks going 6 furlongs on the inner turf. 3:02 is the scheduled post time for this one. The $1 pick 6 kicks off here. JK, if we stay on turf, who do you like?
Yeah, so I printed past performances before numbers, so I'm just giving horse names because I'm always scared that I'm going to say the wrong number.
No, I have the PP up in front of me, so perfect. I will translate.
So I have a couple horses circled and a couple. So I circle horses I'm definitely using, and I underline horses that I may or may not use. It's a new thing of mine, Pete. I thought I'd share that with you.
I like that.
So the couple that I have circled are Samoa, who I think is interesting. If it comes off, this horse has dirt form, and you can rely on that form. She's a talented horse who's kind of knocked on the door with some big performances. Her siblings are 0 for 5 trying the turf, but I remember someone telling me that like Chad believes that Union Rags is going to end up being a pretty nice turf sire. I don't remember where I heard it. It wasn't from Chad, but I remember hearing it. And I even think Chad had a Union Rags that he won on the turf with already. Anyways, so I thought maybe there's some hidden turf there. And it's Belmont. He doesn't typically make too many of those mistakes. And then Kyoto to the couple horses to the outside. What number is that, Pete?
The 10.
The 10. That horse is switching to Rudy. Look, there's certain trainers I don't think you can claim off of, right? There's certain trainers that play the claiming game extremely well, and I don't think you want to claim off of them. But this notion that you can't claim off of people like Bob Baffert or Chad or Todd or Belmont because they're such good trainers, you're not going to be able to move them up. I think that's wrong. I think you can claim off of them because they are playing the game at a very high level. And if you claim off of them or switch to them, I do think that there's a chance that your barn, who has time for an allowance type or a claiming type that can really focus on that horse, you can actually get more out of them because their owners and that trainer are looking to try to win grade 1s and not the 6 at Belmont. So I think there's an opportunity there. So I think Kyoto is a little bit interesting. She ran well for Chad off of Jason's service. So she obviously has some talent if you were worried about that. And I think Rudy could kind of keep her in the mix. And then there's the MTOs, obviously, you have to consider if it happens to come off.
I felt like I'll give my off-track pick first. Summer Brew just sort of leapt out to me as one I'd probably want if the race gets washed off, looking to have the best speed of the MTOs. I didn't honestly go much deeper than that. Need to grind on it more if it comes off. But that's going to be my technical top pick. And then you mentioned Kyoto. I just felt like comes out best on figures and form, and you already made the case of why Rudy Rodriguez has a chance to do just fine with this one. Irad and the Irons felt like an asset as well. And 2 others I'll mention, Too Sexy on turf, not far behind Kyoto. To me, I like the fact that this is the 3rd race of 2021 and felt like one. Rosario is such a different rider than basically all the other riders. I always note his first time on a horse or first time in a while on a horse, and I felt like Rosario might suit Too Sexy in some of the scenarios this race could unfold. And I'll also mention, if we're on the turf as at least a backup, I was going to include a little number 1, Fetching. Plenty of excuses, could get a good trip. So I'm just listing the 8 and 10 for you, JK, and those are my numbers.
I really like Fetching. I actually texted a successful trainer friend right after when the horse was claimed by Cantor Marcy, and I said, and he was like, I was about to drop on the horse. Like I like the horse too, and he hasn't won for Cantor Marcy yet, but I think he will. I like him. I like him as a horse, and I think that there's maybe at Saratoga is when he'll pop, but just remember the name Fetching and find him in the right spot on the right day. I think he's got a race in him that could win at a price. And I do want to mention this as well. If for whatever reason it does happen to be on the turf tomorrow, it will be turf with give. And Kyoto is 3 for 4 in races that are not listed as firm. So
good note.
Horse likes it with a little bit of cut.
Yeah, I mean the thing with Fetching, she just has been up against it. I think in a lot of these allowance race pace scenarios. It's kind of like you said. We're waiting for the right spot. They tried front running 7 days ago. That didn't work out. I assume it'll be a return to hold up tactics here. Anyway, an interesting runner and one that could. Horses like that also, they're really good ones to sort of stable mail because you can forget about them and you don't want to habitually bet them. They're not automatic bet backs, they're situational bet backs. And those horses, I've noticed I've just lost track of sometimes if I don't get an email that says, look for this one when there's going to be plenty of pace. And that's kind of how I see that.
My prediction, especially for those connections, America's Pastime Stables, drop win Saratoga.
That feels correct. America's Pastime, our buddies up there had a terrific run last meet, and obviously local Saratoga connections. They point to Saratoga. A win up there means 5 wins at Belmont, typically not just to them, but to a lot of connections. So something to keep in mind. Let's talk about race number 6, JK, as we move on to the kickoff of this late pick 5 and leg B of the pick 6. We've got 3 and up New York bred allowance types going 6 on the dirt. I thought that number 6 Bronx Bomber looked like the one in excellent form. Love the versatility and running styles he's shown in the recent starts as well. Another that I kind of have to use, number 1 Bears Mafia off that head scratcher of a ride last time. Fits very well off the run 2 back and gets the switch to Ortiz. So I was going to use the 6 as my A and the 1 as my B. How do you see it?
Yeah, I needed a couple in here. Bears Mafia, like you mentioned, Gandy Dancing, obviously didn't end the year well with the 2 bad performances, but this horse has back numbers that absolutely make sense. So I wanted to have that one in the mix. Bronx Bomber, I agree with. And then, look, I mean, T Loves a Fight is a horse where, the Noda brothers, they're up and down. They'll go on a streak where they can't win, and then they'll go on a streak where I would toss horses and they'll win by 7. And they're in the middle of one of those. I want to toss horses and they win by 7 streaks. And so I just think you have to consider them. They get Luis Saez here. The horse was extremely fast last time. And so, I think it's a horse that you want to consider. And then the horse itself, T Loves a Fight, is just kind of a hard knocking grindy type that runs well at Belmont, 4 wins at Belmont, likes the configuration. So I think that's a horse that you probably want to consider as well. And if you're watching the America's Day at the Races broadcast, one of my favorite things to do is watch how annoyed Andy gets when they're screaming in the background. And don't get me wrong, I feel 2 ways about it. Good for you. If you want to scream and root, I am never going to tell anyone not to be enthusiastic at the racetrack. That's why it's so great. It is a little bit loud, especially when there's no one else there. It's all you can hear is them screaming. It's funny to me how agitated.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
He always makes little comments. Well, the loudest, we know who won, something like that. It's very funny.
I mean, look, I'm with you about the screaming, but for maybe even the owner, but I don't know. I was taught early on by Sean Clancy, you're meant to act like you've been there before. So maybe that's just my old school bias. I'm with Andy. You'd probably, if I was on there, you were watching Sky Sports Racing and I was dealing with that, you'd probably be pretty amused by my bitter lemon face as well, JK. So there you go with that one. I'm gonna, just to recap for your picks, I'm going to list you as 1, 2, 6 as A's and the 8 as a B. Does that sound right? Did you have one you wanted to make a top pick over the others?
Yeah, I guess if I had to pick someone top pick, it'd be Bronx Bomber.
Okay, so we'll go together. We'll ride together there, making you 6, 1, 2. And yeah, I mean, I take it I also listed 3rd in my picks. T Loves a Fight, but more of a backup for me. I'm assuming the same for you.
Yes.
All right, let's move on to race number 7. We've got maiden special weights, fillies and mares. We have a guest.
Hi!
You're leaving?
Yeah!
All right, have a great weekend out at Nana's. Give me a hug. Love you. Bye. I thought I had a few more minutes to. I'm so glad she came down to do that, though. Let's get back to this 7th race. We've got 3 and up, maiden special weight type, 6 furlongs on the inner turf. And I'm kicking it back to you, JK. How are we going to get through this leg?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens, obviously, with the surface. But I think Cease and Desist caught my attention. It's a horse that took money on debut at Saratoga. Red Ghost is a horse that came back and won at Keeneland for Wesley Ward. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Red Ghost won by like 12, 11. I mean, just ran off the screen. One of those moments someone tweeted yesterday about how do you handle information when you're at the racetrack. I remember that day specifically where Wesley said that he had told someone that was going to be his Breeders' Cup horse. And so, and I didn't believe him. I called his bluff there, and the horse ran off the screen. But Cease and Desist took money. That race was supposed to be on the turf. So now, they're trying to get back on the turf here. If they do, I think the horse is interesting. But like you said, we got to worry about the weather. I also thought that Quick Conversation was interesting. Ran well first time off the break for Christoph, and it's another horse that I think could run well on the turf. Obviously, we got to see what happens there. And then it's interesting. The MTOs just didn't really move me. I guess you want to take into consideration the first time starter for Belmont, Sand and Sea, and see how that one works. But the 2 that have run haven't really done anything to get me going. You know how MTOs get over bet. So, and then the last one I'll mention is Before You, the other Belmont runner who has a nice little couple of dirt races prior. So we'll see what happens if it ends up being an off the turf thing. I think that's a horse that you'd want to take a look at. But man, this is one of those situations where we can talk about this race all we want, and it doesn't matter until we find out what's going to happen with the surface.
Yeah, I'm going to list you just as 4 A's, 4, 11, 16, 13. I agree that the Mott runners in an off situation look like the ones, 16 and 13. If on turf, and I can't decide if I'm going to be an optimist and pick it that way or not. Probably not. I should probably put MTO on top. But the 11, Quick Conversation, another who'd have to sneak in off the AEs. But I like that run last time, and that race has produced the next out winner. Tuscan Queen, I thought, was a little bit of an interesting runner on the. I was thinking more on the turf, but I mean, gosh, maybe on either surface here. As I think about it for a second, this is a strong debut sire, a barn that can have him ready, and that's just an eye-catching jockey booking. We'll have to see if Before You gets in. We'll have to see where JRV's first call is, if it's on the 7 or if it's on the 13. But just one note that I had. And then Bitten by Kitten on the turf, I'd probably give another look. Super keyed up pre-race last time, and then ridden in a way like it felt like maybe they weren't sure if she'd stay. Cutting back with aggressive tactics. I didn't want to get beat by the 9 if we're on the turf. So my official on turf is 11, 7, and 9, and off turf I'm looking at 16, 13, and 7 in that race.
If you're a Bitten by Kitten supporter, I remember that horse dropped a rider in the post parade, so yes. A little bit of energy dispersal there earlier than necessary, so that you can take that into account.
Yeah, definitely something to pay a little bit of attention to. All right, let's talk about Belmont's 8th race. We've got allowance types going 1 mile and a 16th on the dirt this time around. I like number 3, Superfecto, coming out of a stake where he pressed a hot pace and has worked forwardly since. The 2, Girolamo's Attack, showed plenty of improvement last time. I felt like was still a 4-year-old with upside. And then one horse that I always kind of liked, and I don't really have excuses for, but I think I want to keep in the mix at least a little bit. Number 5, Creed. This one may not have trained on, but I liked him enough last year. I was inclined to give one more try, 3rd off the bench, assuming a price. If this horse is bet, I would happily toss. But I was thinking the world might have given up on Creed at this point, and maybe I'd give one more chance. JK, how do you see it?
Yeah, this is a spread race for me, and mostly because I feel like I can get pretty skinny later. And the tricky part about this race is that you have these horses that have these big numbers that are in their recent past that are coming off of layoffs. Extraordinary Jerry has some big numbers for Todd, and now shows up here for Atras, and Atras can move a horse up. So we'll see what happens with that one. Can he, will he? I don't know, but he fits if he runs to that number. Girolamo's Attack, like you mentioned, Superfecto is another one that I'll be using. And then the two outside horses, Mystic Knight and Family Biz, are two that I want to use as well, just based off of some figures that they have. Now, one of the things that I try to do, is once I kind of see where the odds are, I see what the scratches are, I'll try to spend more money on the ones that I think are more likely. I try not to just blanket, use all 5 of them, but it feels like I'm going to have to just probably use all A's with those and just see kind of how it goes, or what other information I can gather between now and then. But this is a tough race because you just don't, it's not so much about the individual. It's also, is the individual ready? and that's the hard part you're going to have to work through.
A lot of guessing involved. Do you want me to list any one as a top pick, or I'll just list these in numerical order?
Yeah, Girolamo's Attack, I think I would use as a top pick. Safi's been running well at Belmont. He's had 2 freaky performances, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, no, I guess Mischievous Alex hasn't run back yet, but New York Traffic was freaky good. And so I think that this horse will run well. He gets IRAD. Like you said, he's got those big performances, so he'll be the top choice.
Race number 9 is the Grade 2 Pennine Ridge, going 1 1/8 on the inner turf here at Belmont. Who do you like in our stake?
Yeah, I mean, I love Public Sector. This is a horse that, won on debut at Saratoga. You always remember those. I thought he ran well enough last time off a break. Usually Chads are ready to rock first time out, but it was an allowance race. And now Chad's stepping him up into this spot. I just think he fits in here. I think that there's cut in the ground with that Euro breeding. Those horses typically handle it a little bit better than some of the others. He's got a nice turn of foot. He was trying to close into a slow pace last time. All the things I like when it comes to these turf runners. No, and then it's Chad and Jose. So there's a lot to like there. The other one that I'll mention that I'm going to be using as well, I'll use Public Sector as an A. I'll use Step Dancer, who I think is interesting, a little bit sneaky. I thought he ran well last time after some trouble, but Sainthood is a horse that I kind of started paying attention to when that horse ran in the Jeff Ruby Stakes because of the breeding, right? He's a Mashawish who ran on both surfaces, a Lemon Drop kid mare. So, that screams turf, but that also kind of yells, synthetic. So I thought Sainthood ran okay in the Derby, better than I think than most people thought he was going to. I would say he outran his odds, and I think he's an interesting prospect getting back on the grass, or getting on the grass, for the first time. So he's one that I'll definitely want to have a couple of pennies on, but I'll be a single aid to Public Sector.
So I'm going to put the 7 Public Sector as an A, and the 2 Step Dancer and the 5 Sainthood as Bs. Does that sound right?
Yep, works.
Excellent. We see it very similarly. Public Sector caught against the flow last time in the return to the races. Every right to improve with more pace in front of him in that race behind him. You make a great point about being bred for the cut in the ground. Sainthood has the fast races that you were referring to, well regarded enough to be in the Derby. I guess he's famous enough now that I wonder if he's going to be quite a bit shorter than the 4-1 of the morning line, but I still want him on side. And then the other one I was going to mention is the 3 Shaftesbury. Ran a big race last time, I thought, attending and attacking a hot pace and running a career best on what looks like the best surface. Did you have another note on Sainthood?
No, I wanted to say about Public Sector. Last year when I went to do Cart Talk with Chad, and we were just kind of hanging around waiting, and Saul was there. And I think Saul had kind of asked Chad about a runner that they had when the horse was in a debut, and Chad and Saul have a great relationship. And Chad was kind of giving him the business. And he made a joke to Saul, man, I got all these Kingmans and Dubawis and Lope de Vegas, and you want me to run that blah, 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 whatever it was, some US stallion or whatever. I remember him saying that, and it just made me remember how high Chad is on these European pedigrees. And it's obvious. I mean, he seems to be having one, the most success over here with him. So anytime I see him, I always kind of give a little upgrade, because it just in my brain because I know how high Chad is on him for his style and what he's trying to accomplish.
It's a great point. And if you want to hear Chad himself talk about the Tattersall sale, where these horses are all coming from, Nick Luck and I did a special. You can find it in the archive. Maybe I'll even bump it later on Twitter if you follow me at Looms Boldly. And he just talks about the type of horses and how well they fit his program. So yeah, we've got him in his own words talking about exactly what JK was mentioning there. Let's move on to the pay leg of this $1 pick six. First of many we'll be talking about. We're on the turf once again. In theory, fillies and mares, $30,000 claimers going a mile and a 16th on the turf. JK, how are we going to get paid?
Yeah, I mean, if it's turf, I like two horses if it's turf, and I know it's a big if. Freddie Mo Factor is a horse that, from a class standpoint, doesn't necessarily stand out, but from a figure standpoint, does. Horse is tactical. I loved his last race, the way that she rode. I'm thinking about Freddie Mo. He's a he.
Freddie Mo the person. He's a he. Yeah, Freddie Mo Factor, a female.
Exactly. And so,
and be careful if he's got a cranberry vodka. Don't stand too close to him, folks.
So I think that horse is a little bit sneaky, especially from a class standpoint, because I think people might dismiss, like, it doesn't stand out from a class standpoint. Not the type of horse you want to, lean on heavily, but I think from a figure standpoint does. Gray Destiny is another one who is interesting. I think trying to get on the turf. Jake used to own a full Inside Info, and that horse, there was a little bit of suspicion that horse might like turf. Never really jumped up and performed extremely well. I know Linda ended up with the horse. I want to say she turf sprinted the horse, or maybe it was Brad Cox. Anyways, someone had the horse and tried turf. And I remember turf being a conversation. So maybe there's some hidden stuff there as far as turf's concerned. So I had that note on Gray Destiny, and the MTO to the far outside, if it happens to come off Amity Island, seems to have a little bit of a figure edge. And I love those outside draws in these MTO races. These turf horses have never got that stuff kicked in their face before. And I think that when you get drawn to the outside in these races, it's a big edge, especially if you're an MTO and you're proven to like the surface.
Ahead of a big holiday weekend, JK, I don't know how you can't just go with the hunch play on number 14, Amity Island, for all the Jaws fans out there. I'm going to list you as 4, 9, 14 for there. My eye, too, was drawn to Amity Island if we end up off of the turf. Shaka off the Chad Brown claim there. Horse fits very well if we're off. If we're on, we have the same top pick. Freddie Mo Factor, as you noted, been in good form of late. I thought it was interesting that those recent races, you say, doesn't necessarily outclass the field on looks, but it is interesting that those last couple of races of Freddie Mo Factor have produced multiple next out winners. I thought that was interesting and worth paying attention to. I'll also mention the 10 Saved by the Bell, earned a good enough figure when last seen on turf. I feel like has to be considered. And another one, we got the Jaws hunch play. If we're off, if we stay on, we go for the Kelly Kapowski hunch play with number 10, Saved by the Bell. And then number 4, Sengi on Tackett. Found the starter allowance company too tough, but this is a level where I feel like he might or she might be able to build on that maiden win 2 back. 3, 10, 4 for me on turf, 14 on dirt. Any closing thoughts from you, JK, before we let you get out of here?
We get a bonus day of racing Monday.
It's a good day too. There's a lot of good stuff everywhere, especially, well, you'll hear about it later in the show, but Lone Star Park has their big card. Are you working all weekend? Give us your broadcast.
Yeah, one of the best parts about having your own podcast network is that you can say things that may or may not be true, and no one's going to really punish you for it. I'm pretty sure that we're going to have some of the Lone Star races, and I think we might even have Santa Anita a little bit. I think
there's 3 grade ones out there. There's 3 grade ones.
I think we're going to have both, and if we don't, fire me.
I can't fire you. You own the company.
I think we do. So I'm on today from if we're talking Eastern, from 2 to whatever. Tomorrow, I'm on from from 2 to whatever. In the morning, I'll be trying to win a championship. It's the playoffs in Austin's Flag Football League. Yep, we're the 1 seed, and we're gonna go out there and perform at a high level. And then I'm gonna. This is gonna sound really bad, but I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not gonna say it because I don't think they'll ever see it.
Don't be a
No, I can't. No, it's not a big deal. It's just like a little cheeky joke, but whatever.
All right, all right.
I don't think that whatever. I'll tell you, it's not that bad. And then Sunday I'm on and Monday I'm on. So it's and then I'm coming to New York.
It's going to be great. We can't wait to have you here. We'll be rooting for you. Is there any way to get down? Is there anybody like little dude with a chalkboard behind the refreshments table at these Texas flag football games?
Yeah, we're minus 12.5. It's also important to note that this is a strategy I've long had in video games. And when I coached, I could never get the head coach to let me do this strategy on varsity football. But we used to coach. I coached the JV on Thursday nights and then the varsity play on Friday nights. But I would call the plays for the JV, and I was just a receivers coach on Friday night. But one of the things that I did get the head coach to let me do was if I scored first on Thursday nights, and I do it in Little League, and I'll do it in Madden. If I score first, I go for 2. Because if I get it, I put pressure on the other team to then either kick an extra point and let me be ahead, or try to go for 2. And if we stop them, then I can kick the extra point next time, and it's a 2-score game. And so I do that in the flag football league, and whatever they can just
are you a pariah among the coaches? Is it considered bad sportsmanship or anything? Or I wouldn't think so. I would think it's totally above board, but I'm just curious. I don't know the culture of Texas football.
My team is good, so I think the coaches get a little bit annoyed, but that's also because they're out there trying to throw it around like they're Aaron Rodgers. They're 9-year-olds. Stop doing that. Just hand the ball off, you ding dongs.
I think it's helped probably that you've gotten to, unlike many of your fellow coaches, the fact that you've actually gotten to coach Texas high school football. You don't have any like childhood fantasies you're looking to play out on the sideline, like I imagine many of the middle-aged dads who probably have headsets and whatnot.
Yeah, no, we do speed sweep as our main play, and we just do a bunch of stuff off of it, and like a well-oiled machine out there.
I want to see some video. Please take some cell phone video. I want to check it out. Bonus points.
If producer Craig lived in Texas, I swear to you, I would hire him for the day to come out there and film it.
Well, if we know anybody with AV skills in Texas, holler at us, inthemoneypodcast.com. We get yourself a sweet gig, and JK will do the editing himself. There'll be slow-mo, there'll be music. It'll be very exciting.
All that.
Buddy, I can't wait to see you next week. Have a great weekend, and we'll be talking. We're super excited to be working with Monmouth Park again this season, and want to remind folks that the $2,000 Pick Your Prize Handicapping Challenge, 2 weeks away, Saturday, June 12th. You can play on site at Monmouth. I'll be there. You can play via TVG for NJ Bet or Express Bet. Check it out on their website for all of the details. If you go to monmouthpark.com and look under events, you can find the link for the $2,000 Pick Your Prize Handicapping Challenge, or reach out to Brian Skirka, who you'll hear in a moment, directly. Shout out at me if you have trouble and you need further information at Looms Boldly on Twitter or via inthemoneypodcast.com. Next up, very excited to welcome back to the show a man who's been on these airwaves many times, a little bit last year, but a whole lot the year before, and hopefully a whole bunch as we continue on with our partnership with Monmouth Park, which we're extremely excited about. From Monmouth Park, Brian Skirka. Brian, what's up, my friend?
Pete, how are you? It's opening day. Always an exciting day. You're happy to be back on your airwaves.
I'm so pumped already to come down in a few weeks' time. I'm trying to plan it. We're going to be pivoting our horse player happy hour shows from Thursdays, where they've been, to Fridays, hoping I can do one live from Monmouth Park so I can enjoy the Friday sunset racing, as it were, these compact cards that are going to be running on Fridays. We're going to talk a little bit later in the show about Saturday's early pick 5, but why don't you let folks know what the schedule at Monmouth Park is going to be this year?
Sure. So we're starting today. Today is Friday, May 28th. So it's opening day. We race every Friday, Saturday, Sunday through Labor Day, and that includes this Monday for Memorial Day and Monday for Labor Day. But it's pretty much Friday through Sunday the whole summer. Friday, as you alluded to, is 5 p.m. Eastern, first post times. It's kind of a condensed card, 6 races every Friday. So we're advertising it as kind of like a bankroll builder for the weekend, or start your weekend off early. A lot of people take off early Friday night. So those should be fun. And then Saturday and Sunday will be, somewhere in the 12, 13, 11 races a day. So obviously ample opportunities to make some money then. Then once we get past Labor Day, we run Saturdays, Sundays only in September. But we'll be hopefully having some good races Friday, Saturday, Sunday all summer long. And as you said, the one difference, so Friday starts at 5, and then we do start a little earlier than normal on Saturdays and Sundays. We start at 12:15. 12:15 instead of 12:50, which is what we used to. So we've kind of positioned ourselves a little earlier. And then, as you said, we'll discuss our early pick 5 a little bit later, but that's a pool that we're really pushing this year with that early post times. We should be one of, if not the first, 50-cent early pick 5s in the country. So hopefully that's something that players gravitate towards.
I love the idea of trying to gravitate towards running in unusual times. We definitely saw that last year in the pandemic, and of course by accident with the Haskell card, I guess now 2 years ago. But that idea of running at unusual times, it can present some interesting opportunities for players. Another great opportunity going to be happening at Monmouth Park this season, the return of the Pick Your Prize contest. I'm super excited. I'm going to be there in person on June 12th. I know a lot of players are planning on coming in from around the country now that travel is something that's logistically possible once again. What do players need to know about the Pick Your Prize contest? Where can they find more information?
So Pick Your Prize is back in its normal time slot, which is good, which is Saturday, June 12th. So it's a $2,000 buy-in contest. The prizes for this contest, I'm a little biased, but I'll put them up against any contest in the country. So based on 200 players, which we have been getting more than that for this contest, but for 200 players, it's 18 NHC seats, 4 BC seats, and $65,000 in cash. And then again, the cash prizes just go up. Anyone over 200 is additional cash prizes. I think last year we had 228, if memory serves. So if we're at that number, we should be around 6 figures in cash prizes too. You can play on site this year, which is a very welcome return to semi-normal. You could also play online if you wish, TVG or Express Bet. But we will accommodate anyone who wants to play online. Actually, as of today was the first day in probably a year I could walk into work without a mask on. So, in New Jersey, there's no more masks needed. There's no more social distancing needed. So we're back to almost normal. So anyone who wants to play on site, you're more than welcome. We'll set up the Turf Club, our big banquet room, in the exact same way. It almost looks like a mini NHC, big round banquet tables, everyone sitting together. That would be a buffet for the players. So to sign up, you can go to our website, monmouthpark.com. It has all my information on it, or you could email me. Most of the players have my email already, but again, you can find it on our website. If you're playing on site or through TVG, you just have to register with me ahead of time. ExpressBet players, you can either sign up with me or you can pay directly through ExpressBet. But if you plan to play on site or through TVG, you do have to sign up with me by the day before.
I think it's going to be a very big deal. I'm really looking forward to being there in person, getting to meet a bunch of players. Of course, most players have your email you mentioned, but we also have a bunch of new tournament players on the airwaves, Brian, through the efforts we've been doing on Horse Players Happy Hour. And I just have to emphasize again what a terrific opportunity this contest is with that robust prize pool. Remind folks the buy-in again and the just the basic mechanics of the tournament too.
Sure. So it's a $2,000 buy-in. It's 50-50, so half goes to your bankroll, half goes to the prize pool. Excuse me. I got so excited there. And then it's Monmouth races only. So that's a little, back before COVID, there were 3 tracks. There's Monmouth, Belmont, and usually Churchill. But with the mechanics of this year, because there's an online and an on-site component, we have to use the Breeders' Cups leaderboard technology. That's the only leaderboard that can kind of combine different ADWs and on-site. And that leaderboard can only handle 1 track at a time. So it's Monmouth races only. So as a result, for this year, we have lowered the number of mandatory races. We used to make you bet 10 races for the contest. And again, there were 3 tracks. You basically had to bet 10 of the 30 to 35 races that were out there. With only Monmouth Park this year, we're lowering it down. You only have to bet 5 races minimum or maximum, no, minimum. 5 races minimum at $200 a piece. You're obviously free to bet more. And it's win, place, show, exacta. So Monmouth races only, have to bet at least 5 races, at least $200, win, place, show, exacta, and you're obviously free to bet as much and as many races as you'd like.
I encourage folks to take a look and get involved, and I look forward to seeing a wide array of players out there at Monmouth Park on the 12th. One more thing before we dive into these races, something we haven't really talked about on these airwaves. You're the perfect guy to do it with, at least from our point of view. Maybe you feel differently, but the jockey situation at Monmouth Park. The first thing I'll say, so you don't have to, is I feel like I've heard this mischaracterized in certain circles as a Monmouth Park rule. Of course, it's a New Jersey Racing Commission rule, and I sort of sit in the middle on it, Brian. I'll give my thoughts and then let you riff off of those. To me, I feel like this is a case where the Racing Commission feels like, to me, committed a bit of a tactical error, certainly by not, when you don't involve the jockeys in a process like this, or in a way that they consider meaningful, you're asking for blowback. But then I feel like the jockeys also haven't necessarily done themselves any huge favors with these new rules regarding a very limited use of the whip, because the rule, to me, as I read it, very clearly states that the whip can be used for safety, and so many of the jockey complaints seem to be boiling down to, but what about safety? I don't know. I feel like neither side particularly did themselves a whole lot of favors. You at Monmouth Park sit a bit in the middle on this. Can you give us an update of what's going on with this New Jersey whip situation vis-a-vis Monmouth Park?
Sure. So I'll comment twice. I'll comment as Brian, the marketing manager at Monmouth Park, and then just as Brian, the horse player. So Brian, the marketing manager at Monmouth Park, wants to emphasize exactly what you said, Pete, and it doesn't really make it any better. It is what it is, but we've been getting a lot of pushback, people thinking that this is Monmouth Park banning the whip, that we think that whip shouldn't be used. It is a commission rule, as you said. This isn't a Monmouth Park house rule that we decided to create. The commission proposed this rule, I feel like, a year ago. And, the way that commissions work, there was a period where different groups could voice their opinions, yay or nay. And we voiced our opinion during that time, saying nay. We didn't think this was the appropriate rule at the appropriate time. And the commission, which is their right to do, basically said, we're going to go forward with this despite your, disapproval. And the rule is, what it is. It's not going to change from everything that I've heard. And I certainly understand people thinking it's a bad rule. There's people that think it's a good rule, but I just want to get that out there. Again, I know it doesn't, if you're a horse player, it doesn't really change it. The rule is the rule, but it's not Monmouth Park saying we don't want jockeys carrying whips. And so it is a commission rule. So that's Brian Skirka with the marketing manager hat on. Brian Skirka, as a racing fan, totally agrees with you, Pete. I feel like the logical thing to do would be, as the commission, if you thought this rule was needed, bring in all sides and have everyone sit in the same room, and Monmouth Park as the track and the jockeys and whoever the jockeys representatives want to be, and let's find some way to meet in the middle. I feel like that's anyone in any business. That's how it should work. That's what I do with handicapping contests, as we've talked about. I don't just say, this is what Brian Skirka thinks is the best thing to do. Boom, we're doing it. I send out some surveys to players and ask players, and we somewhat meet in the middle. So I as a horse player, would have liked to see that, get everyone in one room and meet somewhere in the middle. But, apparently that didn't happen. So, I think we lost only one, to my knowledge, only Antonio Gallardo is the only jockey that on Friday, when entries were drawn, said, I'm out. I'm not going to ride here this year. Everyone else, I know the overnight looks a little different for Friday, but like Paco Lopez, I guess, had days. He'll be riding here. He's not on the Friday over. Ferrin Peterson. There's a couple that had reasons why, they're not riding to start. But to my knowledge, the only rider that kind of quote unquote opted out was Antonio Gallardo. So once we get a couple weeks going and the jockeys that have days come back, it should look very, very normal, to a normal year in terms of the jockey calendar.
Is there any way to sort of put the genie, not all the way back in the bottle, but is there any way to revisit this from a commission point of view and try to bring the riders to the table and just get something that's less acrimonious? I mean, again, I have plenty of sympathy for the jockey point of view of being excluded from a conversation that has such an important role in how they earn their livelihood. I can also be a little critical of some of the specific things the jockeys have said, which, again, they just don't actually make sense in terms of but what about safety? But you can use it for safety stuff. Is there any way to get to a point where if this gets like smoothed over a little with the jockeys at large, or do you think this is going to remain a political football?
I honestly don't know. I would hope that, again, like with everything in businesses, I would hope that if something went too far one way or too far the other way, that everyone would say, hey, let's kind of revisit it. But I honestly don't know if this is, it's done, never changing, period, over, or if, there's going to be a learning curve. On opening day, if a jockey just doesn't remember, and shows the horse the whip, is that going to be boom, immediate fine or whatever the penalty is going to be, or is there going to be kind of a, he'll get called into the stewards and they'll say, hey, just don't, a little bit of a learning curve. I honestly don't know. I would hope it would be a learning curve since it's such a drastic difference than what it has been, but I don't know if this is a, let's meet after a month and see how it goes, or I'm not exactly sure, to be honest.
It'll all be playing out at Monmouth Park, and the stewards' reports will definitely be interesting to pay attention to. They're not necessarily in the most enviable position here. Hopefully, they can adjudicate in such a manner that makes sense and helps smooth out this tricky political situation for everybody involved. Okay, with that out of the way, let's talk about some horse racing on the track, Brian. We kick things off on this show. We're going to talk about the Saturday pick 5 as I struggle to find my notes. Actually, while I do that, you're good at this game. I'll let you kick off and tell us about Saturday's opener and give your thoughts on this one. 12:15 is the scheduled post time. We've got first level allowance runners going 6 on the dirt, 3-year-old fillies.
Sure. So just as you're looking, I just want to give everyone some background on the meet and just our thought going into the season as a whole. So as I said, we do start a little earlier on weekends, 12:15. The early pick 5, which we're about to talk about, is going to be our featured pool of the year. Again, with the mindset of, we'll be the first, if not, second, if not first, early pick 5 of the season. We're really going to put a focus on those cards, having some turf races in the early races. And, before Naira, as an example, even starts, we'll have 2 races run. We'll be 40% of the way through our early pick 5. So we want to present players with an opportunity to make some money early. The average early pick 5 here in 2020 paid almost $3,500. So we really want to get people's eyes on us early with the early pick 5. And just our racing as a whole, we saw a huge increase last year in really all of the solid stats, field size, average $2 win payout, average favorite price, all of those went up, between 25 and 45%, which is something that we talked about, I think, a little bit last year on this show of, we had some issues in 2019 and earlier. There were some changes in between the 2019-2020 season that we really thought was going to increase the quality of our racing. And even though it was a short meet last year because of COVID, we were able to see every number went up. That we were hoping to win up. So the quality of our racing, we feel like, is back to what it was, 8-10 years ago. We're really excited about it this year. The barn area for the first time in years is overflowing.
That's
so
great.
We're expecting a really, really solid meet. And with that, we'll get into the first early pick 5 of the year on Saturday. And I'm going to start right off with a single, Pete. I'm not even going to get past the number 1 horse in the PPs, Overcharged, coming out of, yes, I understand it was Delta, a 5-horse field there. But, that was just a powerhouse performance. Got a big buyer of 79. Draws the rail here coming off of that 10-length wire-to-wire win for Jose Cameo, a trainer that is new here, one of many, many new trainers here on the Monmouth Park backside. I think this horse breaks right on top and takes some wire-to-wire in the opener. I'm going to single in my early pick 5.
We're reading each other's mail here to start the Monmouth early pick 5s of the meet. Very simple. Like you said, Overcharged comes out best on overall numbers and might have a pace edge in a field that doesn't have a ton of early gas. We can move it right along to Monmouth race number 2, 12:43 Eastern, 6 on the dirt, 3 and up fillies and mares, maiden 25s down to 20s. I like number 5. Let's Take It Izzy in this spot, who I thought had a nice scope for improvement as a second-time starter. Caught some money on debut. I like the fact that was at Keeneland. That race has produced some decent form on pace figs. This one should be in the thick of things. And then to add to the appeal, I like the good-looking local work as well. I was going to try to mainly get out with number 5 in race 2, and I was also going to use a little bit of number 1, La Castiglione, a clear choice on figures, may have been figuring things out late the last day. The only thing I was concerned is if too short in the betting. The last run did come with a bit of a setup, and this horse just doesn't have much early speed. So at even money or lower, I'd oppose the one. At 6-5, 8-5, I would definitely want in the mix. I'll be looking at that early double probable pool to try to get a sense of if I want to be including the one or not in my early pick fives, and I'll definitely have some number 5. But Brian, how did you see it?
So this is a spread race for me. We'll go through the whole sequence. I'm going to have a few singles in here, so I'm going to have a couple spread races as well. But I'm with you on the 5. The one horse, definitely on the ticket. Especially, coming here to Monmouth, talking about the one now, it's not typically a track where horses come flying from 13 lengths back like this horse was last time. Usually you want to be a little bit closer. Now it's a whole new meet. We obviously have to see how the track is playing Friday and Saturday, just to figure in your handicapping. We are supposed to get I was going to say a little bit of rain, but I do think we're going to get a pretty significant amount of rain here starting late tonight into tomorrow. So we might have a wet track, maybe to configure, but just keep an eye. Obviously, it's a brand new meet, how the track plays tonight and tomorrow. When looking at horses, especially like the one who's going to be coming seemingly from pretty far back. This race, we might start with the meet with some insanity, but I know you're not supposed to do like all but one, all but two. but to me, in this race, the 4 and the 6 look a little hard to recommend. So I'm going to use everybody else, 1, 2, 3, 5. But if I did have to pick a top pick, I think I'd go with you, Pete, in the 5. Let's take it Izzy. Jose Delgado, definitely a trainer to keep your eyes on. I think he was second in the standings last year. He was third at the worst. I don't think he necessarily has the name recognition yet out there, but wins at a very high percentage, does a great job. So keep an eye on his horses in total for this year. But as you said, that horse's debut came at Keeneland, was 5.5 to 1. And this, I would have to think this is an easier race than that race at Keeneland. So 1, 2, 3, 5 for me here. 5 would be a top pick.
All right, good stuff. Let's move on to race number 3, 112. Some other stuff will be getting going around the East Coast by this point. We're on the dirt going 6, 3 and up, 30,000 claimers down to 25. Brian, how are we going to keep it going? Is this one of the races where you're looking to narrow down, or is it another spread for you?
I'm going to go single. I think I'm like every other. I'm single spread, single spread, single. So I'm going to take a chance here. I'm going to single the 3, Service with Honor. The thought process is that this one showed that he could sit just off in his winning debut at Tampa, was third early. And I think looks like there's a ton of speed that was inside and outside. The 2-horse Banyan Breeze was basically 4 lengths clear at first call in his last race. And then Algebraic, the 4 right to the 3's outside, also looks like a speed bull and gets Jose Ferreira on. So I'm hoping that those two go out against each other. The 3 can sit just off of them and maybe is in the perfect trip. And another angle I like to use here, I kind of play the jockey agent jockey angle. So Isaac Castillo, who rode the 3-horse last time, stays aboard the 3, Service with Honor. He is, if not the main rider, but definitely one of the regular riders for Jose Delgado. And I actually think he might, if you flip the page back to race 2, Isaac Castillo is riding that horse, Let's Take It Easy, that we talked about for Delgado. But Castillo decides to stay on the 3 here. So I feel like this was his call if he wanted it on the 4 Algebraic for Jose Delgado, but he decided to stick with the 3 who he won on last time. So a combination of hopefully the jockey and his agent like this horse. I think he's going to get a good trip. The 72 buyer that he won with in his debut, puts him right on par with everybody else. So we'll try maybe not as obvious a single as the one in the first race or the one I have later on, but he's 3 to 1, second choice on the line, maybe a tad bit of separation here if we can get him home.
That's the word I was going to use. When you can single one that not so many people are going to be singling, you can get that separation from the pack, and it can lead to those overlaid payoffs in sequences like this. I saw this one a bit differently. I thought it was pretty tricky. I put number 5, Christopher, on top. I thought it was a little bit interesting back on dirt, simply because I felt like the 2 recent runs on dirt were both better than they look. In that 3rd start back, I thought was chasing wide on a day when ground loss mattered. And then if you go to that race 5 back, just didn't break against much better. And the final figure wasn't too far off what I thought might take to win this. So I definitely wanted to have some 5s on the ticket. And then you mentioned Algebraic. I did want to keep involved more as a B type horse, backup type horse for me, simply because 2 nice runs in a row on dirt, an improving 3-year-old, and a chance to be the best speed once again. You make a compelling case for the 3, and I'll try to work in as a backup as well. That's a good angle. It's a dangerous game, the jockey musical chairs. You can get yourself in trouble, but for a race like this on a backup line, I think it's a compelling enough case that I'm gonna throw in. Let's move on to race number 4, 140 Eastern. We go to the turf, hopefully a mile and a 16th, maiden 30s. I must admit, even though I'm basically just down the road here in the Brooklyn Bunker, I didn't think about this race for how it would play if it came off. I really just looked at it as a turf race. I decided to try to go against some of the bigger brand name trainers while their horses make perfect sense and try to get a little creative. I was going to go with number 7, Alonzo Mosley. I was just hoping they'd let Alonzo Mosley roll this time after it looked to me watching the tape that this one just didn't really enjoy being pulled on and rated last time out. And I felt like maybe could go better if they just try to whistle along on the front end. And then if they do rate the 7 again, I give the 8 Pathway to Victory a little bit of a wire chance. This one I felt like was probably just outclassed on debut and then bet last time out, did sort of a pop and stop thing on the dirt. And I just trust the barn on a surface switch. So this is not one that I would want a short number on, but I think you might get 8, 10, 12 to 1 on Pathway to Victory. And then, the Clement and Chad Brown runners, the 4 and the 5, I have nothing against them. And I want part of my ticket to be alive, but I'm happy to stand against for most of my play, just based on the fact that I feel like the brand names could drive the prices below where they should be. How do you see this one, Brian?
Yeah, I didn't see this one well, and as a result, I'm using all. I'm going to 3 singles in the sequence, so I might as well use them all. But I feel like we have similar thoughts. There's a horse in here from Christophe Clement. Doesn't stand out to me. There's a Chad Brown firster in here. This is a maiden 30, so doesn't stand out to me. And I think we have similar thought processes. I was kind of just going by process of elimination, trying to find a price, but I couldn't find a horse that I liked as a price. So I'm just going to use them all and guarantee, at least if I'm alive at this point, to move on. The one thing I would say about your horse, Alonzo Mosley, is, and this can kind of be a bigger maybe story point for the meet, with Jose Ferreira aboard the 7, I mean, with a clean break, that horse is going to be in front. Jose Ferreira is a speed rider. He likes to be in front. And it'll be interesting going back to the whip rule that we were talking about. What I would think, without seeing any evidence, a jockey like Jose Ferreira is going to have a very good meet. A lot of his horses are going to be in front. He's an extremely strong, Jose Ferreira, I don't want to, if I say too high of a number, I don't want to offend him, but I feel like he's in his early 50s at the least. Like he's a older guy, and probably the most in shape human being I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, I would never say a bad thing anywhere near him ever. He is ripped. So with Jose Ferreira on the lead in races, maybe horses a little less likely to pass. I mean, maybe he has a big meet, just something to keep an eye on. But I would say Alonzo Mosley will definitely be on the lead. Another reason to use all in this race for me is, again, as we spoke about, we're supposed to get some rain, so I don't know if this race is going to be on the turf or on the dirt. But I just couldn't find, the Clement and Chad Brown horses, who are going to be the 2 likely favorites, definitely did not jump off the page. Alonzo Mosley, for me personally, I don't love the horses that have a lot of second place finishes and not a lot of wins. So it's just kind of a crapshoot for me.
Yeah, fair enough. That's a really interesting point about the whip rules, maybe creating a little bit of an angle for somebody really attuned to which riders are making the adjustments and or have the ability to do more hands and heels than riders who are maybe a little bit more reliant on the stick. So that's a great thing for players looking at Monmouth regularly to pay attention to, and maybe something we can continue to touch base on. We are running out of time, but we only have one more race left. It is race number 5, 209 Eastern on the dirt going 6. We've got 3 and up Jersey bred first level allowance types. Brian, how are we going to get paid in this early pick 5? Who's your single?
I'll keep it quick since we're over time. The 9 Target Tails to me just looks better. Was very impressive in those Jersey bred races last year. Even though he started his career with 3 second-place finishes, he made huge moves in all of those races, and then finally sat closer to the pace in his 4th career start and just blew that field away. Ran in some open company races at Gulfstream this winter and didn't run terribly for a Jersey bred. I think he's going to put on a show similar to that September 26th race where he won by 9.5 lengths back with Jersey breds. I just think he's better, and I think he's one of maybe the top handful of Jersey breds that we have running right now.
Target Tails makes a ton of sense. One of the 2 I needed as A's, but I was actually going to go with a different top pick. Number 2, Jingo, and not just because I'm such a huge Santana fan, though I was listening to Santana as I did the handicapping this morning, inspired by this runner. I just thought Jingo on pace figures could even be loose up top. I like the potential for improvement as a first gelding. I know the last run was ages ago, but I really liked it. Attending a pace that collapsed, had meaningful trouble in the lane. No idea if this horse will be ready off the layoff, but I definitely wanted to use as an A along with Target Tails. Hopefully we can close out this first early pick 5 of the meet with a nice winner. I loved your tagline for this one, Brian. I don't know if you came up with it or if that was handed to you, but you know the one I'm talking about?
I do, and that was not handed to me. That was right from the old hat rack up there.
I'll let you say it.
So we're branding the early pick 5 this year as the win early pick 5. So I wanted to come up with some sort of catchy catchphrase. I came up with win early, win often.
I love it. Win early, win often at Monmouth Park. Brian, thank you so much. We'll be talking a bunch. Encourage folks one more time to check out Pick Your Prize, and have a great weekend, my friend.
Thank you so much, Pete. See you in a couple of weeks.
Today's show brought to you in part by our friends at LTN Global. We've been very happy to have the LTN Global Innovators series here on the site. I had my written piece go up with Chris Lush this week. Also, my interview with Ken Kirkner, which you probably heard on the early week show. But if not, go check it out. LTN Global offers innovative TV production services that help tracks raise their profile, bring all the TV tricks they've learned from other sports to horse racing. It's a high quality and good value service. To learn more, go to ltnglobal.com. Next up on the show, we welcome back a man who's going to be doing double duty this week. We're going to have him back on Thursday night, audio only, for our popular Pro Player Roundtable, next edition of that fun experiment we do with this guest and Paul Matisse. I'm speaking, of course, of professional horse player Sean Boarman. Sean, how are things today?
Doing good, man. How are you?
Life is good. Getting ready for a big weekend of racing. Perrin is getting shipped off to my mom's. Susan and I have a little staycation planned in the city, getting to go to restaurants we haven't been in a couple of years at this point. We're looking forward to it.
Nice. That sounds fun.
What about you guys? You got any plans around Lexington?
No, sitting in this office betting horses probably.
Totally reasonable. Let's talk about some of the stuff going on in California. You're here mainly to talk about the Golden Hour Pick 5. Let's start off by talking about a couple of the stakes races that we have at Santa Anita before we get to Saturday's Golden Hour. Let's start off with Santa Anita race number 5, 6:15 p.m. for the Grade 3 Daytona Stakes. Short field on offer, but I thought there was some interesting back and forth we might be able to have, talking a little bit of handicapping theory on this one anyway. How did you see this race, Sean?
It's a tough little 5-pack. It doesn't look like there's a ton of pace in here for a turf sprint race. But I'm not totally sure that's going to benefit the front runners in this exact spot, just because they don't really distinguish themselves to me. I think they're going to be a bit over bet. I'm gonna try with the 1-horse Majestic Eagle. I just think he's he should be able to be a little bit closer than he typically is in a field like this, and I think he might be able to outfinish these coming for home.
I could see that happening. There could be a potentially a closer invited into the race case, despite the small field. I went ahead and went with number 2, Bombard, anyway. Really on just form as much as anything else. I just feel like Bombard has been close up with some really good ones in the last 3. And I was thinking that class might tell. Now, you could make an argument that Law Abiding Citizen is really the class play, but I felt like I wanted to take a small shot against. I feel, and maybe I'm overthinking this, but I feel like a lot of people are going to see Law Abiding Citizen doing well 6.5 at Santa Anita and think that that's relevant to today's race when those really good races, actually probably Law Abiding Citizen's best races, came running down the hill. And I feel like this is just such a different discipline that I was going to go with Bombard and see. And I'm warming to your case for the 1 as well. Did you give Bombard any shot in here?
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's probably the most likely winner, to be honest. But I just think at the price he's likely to be, I wouldn't want to make that gamble necessarily.
And what do you think of how Law Abiding Citizen and Bombard like class up relative to one another? You have any thought on that?
No, I see them. I typically look at class via figures, and on my stuff, they're pretty similar. So I wouldn't say one is classier than the other. In particular, I sort of like Bombard just a bit better because of the turf experience. I sort of agree with your call on Law Abiding Citizen. Down the hill is just a much different game than this new chute they have. So
let's move on to race number 7, the Grade 2 Charles Whittingham Stakes, another short field, downhill turf. They say downhill turf, but only for a little bit, going 1.25 miles. I'm so boring in here. I'll just jump right in. I felt like number 4 United, probably too much for them. I like the fact that he showed he can win without Lasix the last day. And it just feels to me like this horse has been figured out in the last few starts. He got what the Brits would say done for toe a few times earlier in the career, where he just didn't have the late burst to get into a turf race. And in this country, we're just so used to seeing turf races won like that in a matter of strides. United reminds me more of a European type runner. Thinking specifically of a lot of the Aidan O'Brien grindy types whose skill isn't that quick burst of speed, but more of that sustained grinding run. Horses like that, for me, when they can be ridden forwardly, very, very tough to beat. I feel like that's probably the case with United in this spot. Did you like him? Did you have anything to oppose him?
No, I do like him. And for the exact reasons you mentioned, I think he's probably just going to lay real good spot off some of this speed and be able to sort of grind past them. He's definitely the best horse in here. Why don't we just go ahead and give out the $2.80 exacta and say Red King probably clunks past the other ones and runs second, and just take that paltry return and move on to the next race.
I like it. We can absolutely do that. We'll write in the cold exacta 4-3 and skip ahead to race number 8, which of course you could play in a double with that 7th race, or you could kick off the Golden Hour pick 4. We'll do the 2 Santa races and then the 2 Golden Gate races. Race 8 at Santa is our 3rd stake on the day. The Grade 2 Triple Bend, going 7 on the dirt, 4 and up with 200,000 in the pot. Sean, how do you see this one?
I hate 8 rings. I just don't see the case for this horse at all. And, I think he'll probably get bet. He's always bet for some reason. And I can't stand him. I'm going to say Lambeau just makes the lead and wires his field, and Exalted is the only other horse I want to use at all.
I'm with you on Lambeau. I think has the speed probably to bury these, and especially Baffert now bringing back one that's clearly ouchy off the layoff seems like one of the easier fades that we're gonna talk about on the day. Which was the other one you liked, and was it more for verticals or also potentially for some horizontal use?
It was the 1 Exalted. I would use it as like a B, as like a backup for the pick 4, and then play like a cold 2-1 exacta.
That makes perfect sense to me. I wanted to talk to you, so I pulled up the Baffert numbers. Now, if I prepared better, we could be showing this on the screen, which would be a lot better for those of you watching via our YouTube channel. Please go over there and subscribe and sign up to get those cool notifications as well when you click that little bell icon. But so I wanted to look at Baffert since the controversy. And it's one of these interesting cases where I suppose you could, if you just looked at the raw numbers, you could make a case that the train hasn't slowed down that much. 4 of 15 for 27% winners, with 10 of those in the money, so 67%. The ROI is low, as you'd expect. But I felt like, you and I have talked about this before, that a better way of looking at statistics with trainers sometimes is looking at them in figure terms. What figure was a horse expected to run versus what figure did they run, whether you're talking about off the claim or second time starters or trying to evaluate a cold spell. Now, I didn't do all of that math, but I can tell you when you go through and you look at the Baffert winners, one of them, the most recent one, Hudson Ridge, that horse was a price, 580 to 1 at Santa. But I mean, it's on the turf. It's almost like it's so not a Baffert thing. I think you can sort of put that over on the side. And you look at the other 3 winners, and they're all long odds on and barely. Corvette by a quarter, Crystal Ball by a half at Churchill, and then the one last weekend, as time goes by, beating a horse ahead who she beat 9 lengths the time before. I think it's pretty safe to say the barn is not firing on all cylinders right now. What do you think about the idea of taking that as evidence to not necessarily oppose every one of his runners, but to take maybe a little bit of a dimmer view? Do you think there's a sound methodology, or do you think I'm potentially getting myself into trouble?
No, I think that makes sense. I would just, I would say if you like one of his horses on paper and it's a decent price, to not, it's all price dependent. If you have a horse like 8 Rings that, like I don't like at all at any price, but especially at a short price, that's an immediate toss for a barn that may or may not be cold. But if you like a horse at a price, I would use it still, just because, it's Bob Baffert, the guy can train. No. And you never know when a cold barn wakes back up for whatever reason. So it's always, whatever spot they're in today and the price they are today for me.
No. I
think, if you start making blanket, I don't like this trainer's horses, I'm not using them, then you can get burned a few times.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I think looking at it that way is what I'm going to try to do in these races this weekend at Santa Anita. The next of which we're going to talk about is race number 9 on the turf, going a mile and an eighth, 8:26 Eastern scheduled post time for this maiden special weight affair. I like number 3 Warbird a little bit in here. Felt like was maybe a little bit against the flow last time. Competitive figures, and I like the fact that Rispoli sticks around. And then I felt that number 8, No Foolery Here, had a good setup and just missed last time, but ran fast enough. And I thought it was very interesting that this one, who closed the last day, projected to be much closer. Timeform US even had on the lead. This one didn't have a smooth run through, 2 back, and just seems like overdue to win the maiden. I was going to try to start off my golden hour pick 4 with this low takeout and the higher minimum with the 3 and the 8. How did you see it, Sean?
Pretty similar. I prefer the 3 to the 8, just very slightly. They're pretty similar horses, but I prefer the 3 just a little bit more. But there was a sort of goofy horse in here, the 6 Dicey Mochera, that I've got. He broke a little slow last time and was just hopelessly last, with really no excuse. He just drifted way back there and stayed there. But that horse finished really fast and galloped out past the field immediately. And when I went back and watched his race in Europe at Dundalk, he was a little more tactical, got in sort of a tight spot on the turn in that race and finished tremendously. This horse has a great turn of foot, and I think could be a little sneaky in a field that I don't think is terrific by any stretch. So I was going to use the 6 also with my top 2 were 3 and 6.
I like that. I like that idea a lot on the 6 as you describe it. And also interesting to note that 3 have come back from that last Dicey Chara race with a winner in 2/3. So the form of it working out all right as well. Would you use no foolery here on sort of a backup line, or are you going to leave out completely and just play it a cold 3-6?
I think I'm just going to leave it out and use the 2 I like a little better.
All right, that makes sense. I think I misspoke. The 9th race is the second race of the. Wait, did I say this? I got myself completely confused here, Sean. Which is which? The 9th race is the second race of the Golden Hour. No, the 3rd race of the Golden Hour. The first race of the Golden Hour double.
Correct.
I'm not going to edit that out. People will hopefully forgive me for my being completely out of it. But now we'll head up north and we'll talk about the second race of the Golden Hour, pick 4. That is the 8th from Golden Gate, 8:10 Eastern, 5.5 on the all-weather. These are for cheaper starter allowance types. Sean, what did you think of this one?
Yeah, there's 2 horses I'm interested in. I think there could be a decent pace in here. So I'm looking for something that can sit sort of slightly off of it and make the first run on the turn. And, my top choice would be the 6, Woe Nessie, who came off a layoff last time. And it doesn't say it, but got in, considerable trouble, I think, on the turn. She broke sharp and then drifted back and then got stuck behind some horses and then came running. So I think she's probably the best in here, but I'm a little interested in the 3, Real Keeper, who for some reason they tried long on the turf last time and she had a little bit of trouble herself in the first turn, but was up in a faster pace than she wants. And it looks to me like she can just sit right off the pace today or Saturday and make the first move potentially. Looks like she could get a real nice trip in there.
I like Woe Nessie as well. Felt like there's probably a figure edge. Second start off the long layoff, as you said, and just feels like one who's supposed to confirm the form with the 4 family trips and go on with it. I like your case on the 3. I will probably use a little bit, maybe one backup line with family trips, just on the idea that on synthetic sprinting, especially, not that much needs to happen for that form to get reversed almost accidentally, just based on what happens on trips here. And to me was clearly the other one as I was looking at figures in this spot. So I was going to play it mostly the 6, and then I'm going to throw in a little 4 and a little 3 on your say so as well to try to get through this leg. And then we'll talk about the last leg, the pay leg, the anchor leg in both the Golden Hour double and the Golden Hour pick 4, race number 9, 8:41 Eastern, mile and a 16th on the turf for these 3-year-old filly maiden 20s. Sean, how are we going to get paid?
To me, this is sort of the spread race of the sequence because I have, not a ton of opinion. I just sort of want to get through it if I'm live. So I would use the 1 and the 2 as my A-line horses. And then the 3 and 5 as my backup line.
Makes sense to me.
I don't have much else to say about it because I just don't, I don't like this race and they just sort of look like the ones to use.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a distinction between that group of 4 you mentioned and the rest of the ones signed on in this spot. And those were your 2 A's were the 2 I wanted to mention. Starting with the 2, It Ain't Easy Being Gray. Felt like the form is a bit darkened here off the poor run sprinting, and then on synth. But if you just key off that turf race 3 back, and then you build in some improvement for the figure for age, I think she could just bury this field, and that's not even to mention the Jonathan Wong factor. So right. the 2 I definitely wanted to press up. And then number 1, Nija, I felt like that was just a much improved effort last time, and this runner's well drawn. So I was going to try to get out as easy as a 2-1 in this spot, and you make a good case about including the 3 and the 5 just on numbers, just on basic your basic handicapping factors as 2 others who make sense in what could prove to be at this level a wide open nightcap. I know you have a lot of experience playing synth over the years. How much? How does the Golden Gate synth, in your experience, compare to other synthetic tracks around the country?
It's similar. I would say Golden Gate used to have more bias to it. It used to, when they first put that stuff down, it was really sort of outside closer favoring, and you could sort of just bet the horses that were going to make that last run successfully there for a while. Now it's a little more fair, I think, and I don't typically see much bias there. You can run on the lead, you can finish. Every now and then it looks like you want to be more outside than inside, but it's a pretty fair racetrack in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You'll see the occasional speed day, but I'm less inclined to back loose-looking horses there because it just seems like the not that it's necessarily tilted towards closers, but just that it doesn't have the biases that we're used to seeing, which tend to favor front runners. Would you agree with that idea?
Yeah, and I think the days where it sort of looks like speed, it's not really speed. It's just sort of race flow dynamics. You get a lot of, frankly, you get a lot of bad fields out there and short fields and just situations where speed will carry just because. So I would be careful to think that a horse that finished on one of those days was really against it. It may have just been. It wasn't really against the track, I guess. It was more just against the race flow, typically.
That makes sense. So you're going to be on Thursday night. It won't drop till very late Thursday night. It'll really be for folks listening pleasure. Most of them on the East Coast anyway, probably early on Friday, unless you're a real night owl. And we'll get your extensive thoughts on the Belmont then. But from this far out, have you given the race any thought? Have you looked into any of the PPs? It was interesting. We had a little survey the other day, and it seemed like amongst the Twitter crowd anyway, Essential Quality seemed way more popular than Rombauer, and it seemed like there was an awful lot of support for Rock Your World. Do you have an opinion this far out?
No. I would, I totally believe Rombauer's last race, and it was faster than anything Essential Quality's run yet. So I understand Essential Quality's trip in the Derby wasn't ideal, but I would disagree with that poll. Would be my first thought, and then Rock Your World. Who knows? I didn't like that horse in the Derby, and he got eliminated, but I can't see why I would like him that much in the Belmont.
If you didn't like him going in, if you didn't like him going in, it's hard to like him coming out just because he didn't get a chance to run. I mean, the only thing I'll say is the form of his race, the form of his Santa Anita Derby and that West Coast form in general did get a little bit of a boost there. That makes me think when I'm looking at prices from the UK in the order of 8-1. I haven't done anything about it, but it makes me think about sending a couple of texts and clicking a few buttons.
Yeah, that makes sense. What is known agenda over there?
That's a great question. Let's pop this up, actually. This is going to be coming after the segment with Jonathan, but we're recording it before, and I'll pop him. I always like to hit him with these prices early and get his gut thoughts as well. So I'll dig for that. It should be here in just a moment if I could find the correct website. And here it is. And it looks like known agenda is 8-1 as well. So I'll have run these down earlier in the show, so I won't do the whole thing. But does that move you at all as somebody who is a big known agenda fan and I think agreed with me, another who just had a trip that you could a trip to forget in the Kentucky Derby?
Yeah, I think at 8-1 I would be interested. Absolutely. I think he ran a sneaky good Derby, honestly.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. All right. Well, we'll talk a lot more about this little sneak preview of Sean's thoughts for Thursday night. We'll be here with Paul Matisse, and can't wait for that. And I'm sure I'll talk to you 6 times between now and then, Sean. But enjoy your weekend with the girls and Norman, and we'll be talking soon. All
right, buddy. Good to see you.
Just a reminder that there's a ton of contest action at Lone Star Park this weekend, Saturday, May 29th, a $500 NHC feeder live money contest, another $500 NHC feeder live money contest on Sunday, May 30th, and then the big one, the $2,500 NHC finals contest that they've got. You can go to the Lone Star Park website for all kinds of information. But if you can get to Lone Star, this is a great weekend to do it, a chance to play in 3 separate contests, and Monday's Cards Loaded. We'll be doing a special show about that on these airwaves. We want you to check it out. For more information, go to LoneStarPark.com. Next up on the show, very happy to have another friend come by to join us. You probably know this man already from the work he has done on the NHC Players Committee as a renowned contest player himself, and also on the Sport of Kings podcast. And we're going to talk about that as well as the website. I'm talking about Chris Larmey. Chris, welcome back to the In the Money Airwaves.
Hi, Pete. I'm glad to be here. Always enjoy talking racing with you. So any opportunity I have, I like to take advantage of it. So I'm happy to be here.
Let's start off talking about Sport of Kings specifically and the podcast. You guys have had a great run of shows. I know you've got Paul Matisse scheduled for next week. Any news on the podcast front or anything else particularly exciting going on at the Sport of Kings website at the moment?
Well, on the podcast front, we do them every week, and it's been pretty fun. I mean, I sort of realized a boyhood dream. We had Andy Beyer on for the Preakness pod, and I've always been a fan, so I have to admit I was sort of a fanboy during that show. And it was just great. I mean,
I've been that exact podcast host.
Yeah, it's just kicking around the races, especially big races like the Preakness with Andy Beyer. That was fun. So, that's been a lot of fun with Scott Carson on the podcast. And then Scott, he's putting his heart and soul in this sportofkings.net contest site, all free contests, free PPs, and they've got several contests going, including one for the NHC, where you can win an NHC spot. But they just started up one with Canterbury Downs, which kind of culminates at the end of this. I think they're calling it the Canterbury Trails contest. But that Canterbury is a really nice little track that has pretty player friendly, has some good takeout on some of the pools.
Yeah, 10% pick 5 and pick 6 and industry low.
Pretty good sized fields, turf and dirt, and so there's a contest going there for every day. There's I think a race of the day from Canterbury, so that's the latest thing. But so if you're interested in, if you aren't used to contests and you want to get started, this is a great way to do it. It's all free. You get free PPs, and you can get a taste of the contest play. And I think once you get a taste, you'll want more.
That's how we position it for sure. Let's actually, before we get to the Lone Star Pick 5, which is the technical reason that you're here, they've got a big contest on Monday, of course. But I want to talk to you about the NHC Hall of Fame voting, a new process this year. I was on Steve Bick this week, and we went through all 10 entrants, and boy, is it a tough, and I won't hold your feet to the fire in this regard, but boy, is it tough for voters to have to make up their minds given the quality on offer in the field. I may volunteer my 2 cents. Steve didn't hold my feet to the fire, but I may give up my ideas before I let you get out of here today, Chris. But one thing I thought was interesting was this is a completely revamped process, and I'm just taking a wild guess that as the head of the NHC Players Committee, you might have had something to do with it.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to make the process more inclusive, get the players on the tour involved, make them feel like it was their Hall of Fame, and they were involved in choosing who needs to represent them as players in the Hall of Fame. And also maybe create a little bit of buzz around it. So I think in the past, there really nobody really knew who got elected and why and how. So we tried to create a process really transparent. There's a nomination process which has a smaller group of people involved, but then the top 10 people out of that nomination process get in front of not the entire tour. That was what I was shooting for initially. Actually, I wanted to let everybody on the tour vote. But there was some concern that a lot of the new members maybe really don't have enough, knowledge about the accomplishments of the players and maybe aren't informed enough to make a vote. So we kind of compromised, and I think we ended up with you have to have been a tour member for at least 10 years and made it to the NHC at least once. So we figure if you've been around for 10 years and you've been to the NHC, then you're informed enough to make a good vote for the Hall of Fame. And I think that ended up with like 400 or 500 tour members that kind of qualified, and they got an email with an invitation to vote this week, and that's where we are right now.
And the voting closes next week. I know we have some voters among our listenership. And again, from your point of view, I'm not gonna ask you to do what I'm about to do. But after really banging my head on this for a while, there's so many ways you can go. But the two names, if I had a ballot, that I'd put right at the top. And again, I wouldn't argue with anybody who put the other 8 names. But for me, Dave Goodfreund on his body of work, and Michael Bachuk. And the thing that I like about both of them is not only do they have amazing achievements within the contest world, within the NHC itself, but they're both players for me who've done a lot for horse players and contests outside of the NHC as well. Dave, obviously, with all the work he's done over at in developing the Derby Wars website and being very giving of his time to players and authors such as myself to when I came into the game but I don't think it's limited. It's not like, oh, he did me a favor. He did, and I hope this doesn't sound arrogant, but players a favor by sharing these insights that were then published in a book that anybody can read. So that's one thing. And then for Michael Bachuk, the thing that pushes me absolutely over the top with him is the horse rescue stuff and the Glorious Dancer story and the way he's used that to create an awareness of aftercare among not just contest world players, but horse players in general. I really feel like that was a bit of a sea change, and that was an issue you didn't hear much about 5 years before that happened that I think most horse players know about today. So I throw that out there for those who asked what I would do. But Chris, again, you're here not to talk about NHC Hall of Fame stuff, though. I'm glad I think the more inclusive process is a great way forward, and congrats on that. But let's talk about.
But I just want to say that I really do like the fact you're talking about it. I mean, that was part of the trying to change the process. You've got an opinion. You've got a good opinion. I think you make a good case. I think you can make a strong case for the other people. And I'm hoping maybe some of the other podcasts, like you said, you talked about on Steve Bick, we can get a little discussion going just so players, get a little more interested and kind of appreciate what some of their peers have done for horse players in general, for the sport, and just, give them sort of a target to aim for themselves, especially for the younger players just getting started.
I think that's right. Anything we can do in general to shine a positive light on horse players, and I mean to have our own Hall of Fame. Someday I want to see a horse player in the National Museum and Racing Hall of Fame, and this is a cause that I think about from time to time, but I've never done anything about. But the fact that we have this under the aegis of the NHC, it's a great. I don't know if it's a step in that exact direction, but it's a step in the end goal of recognizing horse players and how important we are to the whole kit and caboodle. I've got my thoughts, by the way, on the inaugural horse player Hall of Fame class that should go into the National Museum Racing and Hall of Fame. We talked about one of them already in this call, Andy Beyer. Don't get me wrong, there's others, but like I feel like the first 6, Glenn Ragozin would be a name I'd love to see. Stephen Christ would be a name I'd love to see. Harvey Pack would be a name I'd love to see. But anyway, that's a conversation for another time, and something I really need to start working on behind the scenes if we have any hope of getting it done.
I agree, though. You just, to me, we talked about Andy Beyer. Those 4 guys would be good candidates for the Mount Rushmore of horse players.
That's a good way of looking at it.
And there's no reason why we can't have a horse players exhibit in the National, Museum for Racing, right across the street from Saratoga. There's no reason why there shouldn't be something, around horse players there. I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, well, that's a project for another day. All right, now the reason you're here, Lone Star Park on Saturday. We've got this late pick 5 to talk about. It kicks off in race number 5 at 5:27 Eastern. We're on the turf going 5 for 3 and up fillies and mares. We've got non-winners of 2 life claimers. Chris, what did you think of this race? What would be your approach in terms of betting? Is there a horse in here that leaps out to you that you might be interested in if there was a contest, a $2 win place contest on this card? What do you think?
Yeah, and there is a contest, in fact, at Lone Star for Saturday, all weekend long, each day. And so maybe if we can't do the impossible and hit this pick 5, we might can point them towards some good horses to key in that contest, because there's some NHC seats and some cash, I think, on the line for a Saturday contest at Lone Star.
I love that idea of them doing the 3 contests, the Saturday, Sunday, and then into the big one Monday. Definitely gives people a reason to travel. I know there's a bunch of players planning on heading down and out that way. Benny South Street, I think, mentioned to me he was going to be heading out there, and excited to see that develop. And I think as travel gets more and more, re-normalized, hopefully this is something that will continue for years to come. I'd love to spend Memorial Day down in Texas drinking beer and eating barbecue.
I did actually. Pre-COVID, I went to one of the contests. I can't remember if it was Memorial Day or later, but it was a really nice track. I enjoyed myself. They had George Strait there playing music after the races, so awesome. It was pretty cool. All right, so back to the races. You can tell I've been trying to put this off. No, I'm just kidding. I like this race because, to me, I think the 11-horse Morak, who's probably going to be even money, is definitely vulnerable. So this is the kind of race where I want to try to beat that horse and create some value right in the first leg of the pick 5. Asmussen's good off the claim, but this horse really isn't that fast. It's not in great form, and it doesn't have a lot of tactical speed for a 5-furlong turf race. So I think it's vulnerable. Plus, going from dirt to turf is not an Asmussen thing, especially off the claim. So I want to beat that horse. The horse I liked the most was the 7-horse Don't Float the Ice. I like this horse. He won on debut 5 furlongs on the turf. He hasn't won since, but he has some excuses. He 3 of those, his last 4 have been on the dirt. I think he's clearly a turf horse. Now he's going second off a layoff. Back on the turf. He's got speed. I think he might get the lead. That's always dangerous at 5 furlongs on the turf. So for me, my A horse in here would be Don't Float the Ice. And then since we're trying to beat the even money favorite, I'd probably put in a few others that are kind of the same. They're sort of plus turf horses that are a price. The 2, she's a gold lady, I guess. I don't know how you say that. Say that name for me, Pete.
I'm going She Is Gold Lady.
Okay, She Is Gold Lady. Okay. She's going similar kind of thing, plus turf, going back to the turf. Same with the 6-horse Sweet Linda. Those are 2 I probably would use. Maybe throw in the 3-horse Mom's Pass. There's not as much value there, but I think the key here is you're trying to beat the even money favorite. My key horse would be the 7 Don't Float the Ice, and then maybe include a few others. But I like this leg.
We have a similar idea, but we went about cracking the nut differently. I went with the others, who I presume will be closer to the top of the market, as opposed to playing it for pure chaos. And I was going to potentially use the 11 Morak as a backup on some lines, but I agree. I'm worried about the horse being too short. One that I may use more of, or decide to spin more, depending on what the actual market tells us. Top pick for me was number 10, Gray Zone, who just came out well on numbers, looked to be against the flow with a bad trip last time, I thought, shot to improve. And then the 8, Cash Business, for me, improved a little bit for turf, going out second time off the layoff here. So 8, 10 for me. Chris's numbers I have is 7, 2, 6, and 3. Hopefully we can beat this favorite and pivot right on to leg B, race number 6, 5:55 p.m. Eastern. We're on the dirt, going 5 furlongs, 3 and up, fillies and mares, Texas breds, maiden 7,500s. And I'm jumping right in here, Chris, because I was exceptionally boring. This was a spot where I felt it was going to be very tough to beat the entry of number 1, Texas Mama, and number 1A, A Date with Bling. The former drops after attending a fast pace, and the latter just missed off the layoff, a second time off the layoff here, back in just 15 days. I will mention Constitution Girl, who on a recent show I said I'll bet Constitution Firsters almost automatically. Of course, this one isn't by Constitution, but Sire Intimidator off to a promising start with Firsters as well. I was going to use the entry and the 2 and just try to get through this one. Did you have any strong opinion here?
I actually pretty much on board with you. The horses that have run, they all look pretty bad. Well, I shouldn't say pretty bad, but they don't they don't entice me to play them. Other than that entry, I don't think you can leave them out. Like you said, you have to play them. But I think, this is kind of the race that is ripe for a first-time starter to win. So I agree with you. Constitution Girl, Asmussen Firster, I think he owns this one too. That one definitely is probably one you have to have in there. The only thing I would say is I would consider the other firsters, especially the 5 Flying J Cupcake, who has a pretty good gate work, and that trainer's actually won a race with a first-time starter before, and it's a 4-year-old. And I like 4-year-old first-timers against 3-year-olds just because for these underexposed horses, 4-year-olds just supposed to be better than a 3-year-old. And a lot of times there's reasons why they haven't been to the races till they're 4. But, I like that first-timer 4-year-old with a pretty good gate work for a trainer that's gotten a win with a firster before. In a field like this, that big price is, to me, that's one you want to include. And even the other firster you might want to include just because, the horses that have run just haven't really shown much. And so I'm always leery of not including the first timers, but I could maybe leave the 4 out, but I would definitely include the 5 with the horses that you mentioned. I'm
going to leave it 2, 1, and 5 on an A line for you. And I'll throw the 4 in there, that other first-time starter we talked about, Moro Nala. I'll throw in as a B. I feel like that's a reasonable case, unless you tell me not to.
No, that's fine.
Okay, let's move on to race number 7, 6:23 Eastern on the dirt, going 5, 3 and up. Fillies and Mares, maiden 7,500s. Chris, we'll keep it with you.
Yeah, I kind of going to use the same approach. Pretty much what you had talked about last time. I'm going to go with one horse of the established form. I think the 8-horse Prospera kind of stands out on the drop. It's definitely the fastest horse. If it runs to its best race, it will probably crush the field. So I think you have to have the 8 Prospera. It has run some clunkers too, so I wouldn't single it. And then I would probably go with first-time starters again, because the ones established form. There's a few others I probably would include, but the firster I like quite a bit. It's the 2 Should Have Been a Cowgirl, who has some pretty nice workouts. And is, again, the trainer's won with firsters before. So for me, Prospera is the established form, Should Have Been a Cowgirl, the firster, and there's a couple others, but I'll hold off on that and see what you think about this one, Pete.
All right, very, very similar on the top line there, with Prospera being, to me, the obvious choice. Didn't take to the turf, but the previously established form on dirt would make her a very tough horse to deny in the spot. I was going to use the 12 Tap It Right as well as the potential best speed. I thought you could make an argument as a double flow move up with the right outside draw, and I want on some backup tickets at least. You mentioned the 8 and the 2 as your A line. Was it the 5, the other one that you wanted in here, Ego Sum Key Sum?
No, I was looking at the 1 and the 3 of the horses with the established form.
Gotcha.
I wasn't too high. The 5, that one I could go with the 5. It's just that trainer doesn't win many races. That was the only thing. If the trainer had a little bit better record or had won with firsters, I might be a little more interested. So
that makes sense.
It is a 5-year-old, so you never know. I mean, the first-time starters are the ones that can kill you in these cheaper races and these big fields.
If you can afford it, you can consider it, but probably one, I agree, you can get away with fading. Let's talk about race number 8 on this card, 6:51 Eastern on the dirt, going 6.5, 3 and up Fillies and Mares, Texas breds, second level allowance types. Thought there were a few ways you could go in here. My top pick is going to be number 3, Texas Red Bell, slightly up the ladder in class, but looks a good candidate to be the best speed even so. And I felt like this was a generous looking morning line price anyway. The 1 Rosie Jane has shown versatility in terms of running style that I think might be useful. This horse could get a perfect trip if the 3 ends up being more of a pop and stop type. That was another reason why I liked Rosie Jane. There were just some scenarios where I saw her tripping out beautifully. And then one I had listed as a B is the 7 G. She Sparkles. I felt like would be fit enough on the cutback and looks to be thriving or doing well, at least for a racing. And if they go too fast, I thought that the 7 G. She Sparkles could be the best late. Chris, what are your numbers in here?
Yeah, I kind of agreed with you. Texas Red Bell looks like the horse could get loose, and so I think you definitely want that one. I agree. Also, the morning line seems a bit high, especially in a 7-horse field. And Rosie Jane kind of figures. So those two, I agree with you. The one that I would consider in here that you didn't mention is It's My Money as kind of a bomber, because actually this horse came off a layoff at Lone Star last year and ran probably the best race of its life. Now it's coming off a layoff again at Lone Star, a barn change, but the trainer's been doing okay at the meet. So, that horse to me is interesting at a big price. That's the one I might include that you hadn't mentioned.
Love the idea of, any excuse to throw in some 20-1 shots to potentially really juice up this pay, and certainly super useful for contests as well. Let's move on to our nightcap, our anchor leg, race 9, 7:19 Eastern, 1.16 on the turf, freeing up fillies and mares, maiden special weights. Chris, how are we going to get paid?
Well, this is, to me, the toughest race in terms of being able to eliminate horses. This is one I think that you want to be a little bit conservative on. I did identify a couple price horses. The one I liked the most was the 3-horse Duchess Bubbles, who she's never been on the turf before. But, she's by Bodemeister out of a Smart Strike mare, so there's kind of turf breeding on both sides, and Bodemeister's actually run pretty well on the turf. Her dirt form says that, she could run with these and gets an inside post, probably a big price. So that was the horse I was the most interested in. I think you can make a case for a lot of them, but, that was the one especially like in a contest format, that was the one I was looking at in here.
Reading each other's mail again here in the last race, just on that breeding angle. Smart Strike, damn sire. How can you rule out improvement for turf? You make a good point about Bodemeister as well. I had the 3 listed as my top pick, and the backups I was interested in were the 8 Jebediah and the 10 What's News. Just felt like they were both kind of obvious on their form, tactical speed, good figures. I hope that they go fast enough that they set it up for that 3 to come running at least in a number with them, or even to set it up for the 3 overall. Did you have any other numbers in terms of spready backup types to list on our little in the money plus sheet here?
Yeah, I would agree with you on those two. I mean, they're kind of obvious, but I do agree that it's hard to leave those out. There's 2 others I might consider. One is the 12-horse Marlowe. I don't like the post. Horse ran really poorly last time, but the race before that could win. A repeat of that could win. So if somehow could work a trip from the 12-hole, and I haven't watched enough turf racing with 12-horse fields at Lone Star to know how tough that is to overcome. But typically on the turf, that's a big assignment. But at a big price, that one's not impossible. And then down towards the inside, the 2 Xylophone. That horse should get a good trip, and it should come running late. So, to me, this race is kind of wide open, but I'm kind of hoping that Duchess Bubbles takes to the turf, because that could, be the way to score in this field.
Fantastic. All right, Chris, thank you so much for your time today. Much appreciated, and we will be talking with you soon.
Great. Thanks. I enjoyed it.
Just want to give a quick shout out to our partners at Canterbury Park. Got the lowest takeouts going on horizontal rate wagers with the 10% rake on the pick 5 and the pick 6. This is a track you want to be checking out. To learn more, go to canterburypark.com. Next up on the show, as part of our series sponsored by the JRA, we have an old friend back on these airwaves, Candice Hare. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great. I'll make my public apology. We were not that the listeners or viewers will know this, but I think you'll appreciate this story. We were meant to record this yesterday in the afternoon, but unannounced, my brother, I should have the bottle here as a prop. My brother showed up with a bottle of Elmer T. Lee, a very coveted and fancy bourbon for the uninitiated. And we opened the bottle, and I didn't show up for my 2:00 meeting. That's funny how that happens.
You know what? That was even better than you just saying, "Hey, my brother came by," and I think got kind of distracted. Now, respect. I'm good.
Excellent. JRA has been in the news with France Godina making the trip over for the Preakness and now heading up to the Belmont. Just curious, didn't prep you for this, but just curious to get your thoughts. I felt like, maybe with the more distance and a little bit more even run, this horse could at least be a pace factor come Belmont Day. What are your thoughts on him moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I can see that, especially over the further distance. We do tend to see that when we have horses come over from Japan. It's usually one extreme or the other. I talk about that a lot. Usually they want to be on the lead or they want to be way out the back. And I tend to find that is a factor because the obviously it's mostly dirt horses coming over these days from Japan to the US. And the dirt courses there have such extreme kickback. They're sand-based. So you're going to usually have the most success if you're either on the front where you have no kickback to deal with, or if you're way out the back, because then when you're closing, you can close out wide and not have to be behind all those horses who would be kicking that dirt into your face at a pivotal moment. So no surprise that we see him, possibly having the capability of having a factor in that way. I've always kind of thought he was a little bit of a cut below some of the others we've seen come over from Japan, but as I've said many times over the years, a horse from Japan is going to win a really big race in America on the dirt sooner rather than later. Their dirt crop is really, really deep, and I think it's telling that you can look at a horse like him who is still competitive in these races. He's not getting like his doors blown off by 15 lengths or something, and I say like, well, maybe that's like a C-list horse. That shows you how far forward Japan has come in the dirt game.
That's an absolutely fair point. Before we move ahead and talk about the Derby, I want to look back to last weekend on the Oaks, a race we talked about here with Klaus Ebner last week. Was curious to get your thoughts on that, and curious what you think that one of the most popular horses in the world, Sadashi, is going to do next coming out of that race.
Well, I mean, she'll likely have a break. It's that time of the year, and we'll see her back in the fall. I'd imagine they would still run her in the third leg of that Triple Tiara sequence, just because that's typically what you see. It's really no different from America in that way. With 3-year-olds, you want to keep them in those age-restricted races as long as you possibly can. So I imagine we will see her back against those 3-year-old fillies again in the fall. I had no problem with her run, to be frank with you. She's always looked at a horse who was going to be limited as far as distance was concerned, and then there's nothing wrong with that. This is the time of year that you find those things out. So I think she's going to be fine. I think she's going to win plenty of Group 1 races going forward. We just might see them, over a mile.
My daughter, who made a small cameo on the show earlier when I was speaking with JK, her favorite horse in training. Daddy, when is the unicorn running again?
That'll do it. That'll do it every time.
Let's move ahead to talk about this weekend's JRA action, specifically the Japanese Derby. It's not priced up in a whole lot of places, but it does look like we'll be dealing with a very short favorite in the spot in the form of Euphoria. Very curious to hear your overview of the race, and then I may hold your feet to the fire in a few minutes for a selection. But what are your thoughts heading into this year's Japanese Derby?
I would say Euphoria looks very tough. It's a little bit similar to last year's Derby in that way. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, he's Contrail or something already, but he's one of those horses who, again, had success as a 2-year-old. That tends to be a really, really good sign in Japan. It's something that maybe for an American horse player is a little bit strange, because I feel like we're so used to horses who have the most success at 2, not necessarily training on to the Derby, but that's not the case in Japan at all. Typically in those crops, whoever was best at 2, they stay best as you go forward. Typically, if you're looking for a price in these types of races, you're looking for a favorite who's not going to stay And unfortunately, I don't think you're going to get that with him either. He's by Epiphania, who's the son of Cesario. He was a Japan Cup winner. He was a really, really nice horse. If you never watched Epiphania run, highly suggest looking him up on YouTube. He was a beautiful animal, and he stayed all day. And he's out of a Heart's Cry mare, which just adds distance underneath. So, I mean, this is a horse who probably could go 2 miles if you really asked him to do so. So he's going to be very tough to beat in that regard, just because he's already kind of put forth his superiority in this crop, and the distance I don't think is going to hinder him one bit.
From a wagering point of view, is this a case of figuring out who's going to run with the favorite in your vertical exotics, or is there something creative we might be able to come up with as an alternative just for wagering purposes?
I think for wagering purposes, this is the type of race that I would make a small win bet on somebody else and just try to be aggressive. Not a horse who's sitting at single figure odds. It needs to be high enough odds to mitigate the risk you're taking, knowing that you're dealing with a heavy favorite who's incredibly logical. There are a few horses in here who maybe haven't run against him recently, or maybe project to improve over further distances. So as long as they were, double figure odds, I'd be looking in that direction, just kind of something small but aggressive.
Any particular specifics as far as that goes? I mean,
you want the name.
I'm looking over the market here. It looks like the main alternatives in terms of the bookies right now, and this is a few days out, but Satono Reynes listed actually as short as 3-1 in the betting, and Shahryar at 10, and then everything else 14-1 or higher. I really do take that point that you make, though. Look, I'll bet the second choice against a heavy favorite if I love that horse. But if it's more of a strategic play like you're describing, I'd much rather look to something at the higher end of the odds spectrum if I'm going into the teeth of a heavy favorite. I think that's just a good general note for horse players that goes well beyond this race. But I mean, if you let me know what you think, if you got anything for us to start thinking about sinking our teeth into from this far out.
Yeah, I mean, well, one thing I will say, just to give context, because you mentioned Satono Reynes as well as Shahryar being the two horses taking money, I can almost guarantee you both of those are pedigree plays, because they're horses who've shown a little bit of ability, but not enough to warrant being that, second or third choices, at least in my opinion. But Satono Reynes is full brother, I believe, to Satono Flag, he was a Group 2 winner during his career. He was known for his stamina, though. He raced over 11 and 12 furlongs almost exclusively towards the end of his career. And then Shahryar, who you mentioned, is a foal to Align, who was a Derby winner. So you know that he won this race. So if brother did it, he probably on pedigree can do it too. So that's probably where you're getting those odds from. The horse who I would be looking to as an alternative would be a horse named Wonderful Town. He's a son of rulership out of a Deep Impact mare, so again, no concern, at least on pedigree, as far as that distance goes. At 2 years old, he was fine. He was second on debut, and then he broke his maiden over at Nagata, and then he ended up finishing third in a listed race over 9 furlongs. But this year, he has shown a lot of ability. He won his first race off the belt there at Tokyo Racecourse in the Aoba show, and he actually wasn't meant to come back and have that race be his seasonal reappearance. He was meant to come back in the 2000 Guineas, but he had a bit of a hoof issue, and that's what kept him out of the race. So you saw him in this Group 2 race instead, over 12 furlongs. He won it absolutely no problem. He seems to be in good health. So he's the one I would look to, because the pedigree is there, and there's just enough signs that he looks like he could be kind of that late bloomer. It's around Belmont Stakes time here in America. We look for those types sometimes in that race, and this is no different.
16-1 in the early betting there. That's a great thought. We appreciate you coming on the show. There'll be much more on inthemoneypodcast.com in terms of the Saturday night JRA races from Klaus and the rest of the team. We encourage folks to check that out. We encourage you to follow Candice at Candice Hare, and then a little underscore at the end on Twitter. Much more from you coming as well. We look forward to having you on soon. And sorry again about about standing you up yesterday. I feel like a heel.
It's okay. As long as the bourbon was good, I totally understand. But thank you for having me. I always have a great time with you guys.
Cheers, Candice.
Bye.
That's going to do it for this edition of the show. I want to thank producer AJ, sitting in ably for producer Craig, who's hopefully enjoying his weekend off, his rare weekend off from work for us. We got to thank the guests, of course, JK, Brian Skirka, Sean Boarman, Chris Larmey, and Candice Hare. Been great to get a chance to catch up with them. Thanks to our founding partners, including the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation. You can still get your In the Money whiskey, this new rye whiskey finished in apple brandy barrels. We've got some other fun stuff coming up, cooking with them. trfinc.org/players for all the details. Thanks also to our founding partners at 10 Strike Racing. Looking forward to getting to see Marshall Graham in the flesh this weekend. And of course, we always like to root for the purple and black. Thanks, though, most of all, to all of you, the listeners and viewers, for making these shows so much fun to do. This show's been a production of In the Money Media. Our business manager is Drew Coatney. Our chief creative officer is Jonathan Kitchen. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. May you win all your photos